Hello, Alio. I don't know if that's a word, and if it is in whatever language, I hope it means hello. If not, we're going to turn it into a language, and I'll just start speaking gibberish, and people will be like, "Yeah, it makes sense." This is Indonesia's butterfly effect on human history. I don't know if anyone knows, but what is highlighted here is Indonesia. A ton of volcanoes. Also, this little thing of land here, I believe is Java. Hold on, I gotta yell at my dogs. Okay, shut up, knock it off. That's what I say. This is Java, I believe. Java has 148 million people. Russia has 146 million. Yeah. That's a lot of people. Didn't know that many people could fit. I'm surprised it's not sinking. It's just ridiculous. So here it is, Indonesia. Let go. By the way, Indonesia, I think you're number 3. You're down to number 3 on the people who watch the countries that watch my videos. My nose itches.
Impact on human history. From fast shifts in the global climate, changes to North America's population distribution, the development of the modern financial markets, to even the creation of a new religion with millions of followers. Indonesia has either been at the center of it or indirectly caused it, and its influence on the world is likely to grow. I'll go ahead and start with the most insane way Indonesia has affected human history. 74,000 years ago, a volcano erupted in what would become Indonesia and nearly killed everyone on the planet. What was at the time Mount Toba and is now Lake Toba blew 2,800 cubic kilometers of debris into the atmosphere, dimming the sun, which caused a 10-year volcanic winter, destroying food sources across the planet. One study claims that there was as few as 40 human breeding pairs left on Earth, though some say this number is quite exaggerated, and the number was probably somewhere between 1,000 to 10,000 breeding pairs. I wish I could report that this was the only volcano within Indonesia that has caused human suffering, but even today, Indonesia has the most active volcanoes of any country in the world, because it's sitting right on the Ring of Fire. I could go on for days.
I did know that because I did a video on Indonesia and their volcanoes from Johnny Harris. And that was terrifying. Terrifying.
About deadly volcanoes on this archipelago, but I'll just mention one more notable eruption. In 1815, Mount Tambora erupted, causing what is known as the year without a summer. The numbers aren't exactly clear, but it's believed by some historians that the volcano killed millions across Europe and Asia due to crop failures and disease. This volcano, indirectly, had quite a cultural impact. There wasn't enough food for horses, which resulted in the first generations of the bicycle being invented. Paintings became more depressing, and the color red was used more often. A similar thing actually happened after the 1883 Krakatoa eruption, also in Indonesia. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
I have to ask, Indonesia, why does your country hate the world so much? Why do your volcanoes want to kill everyone? Oh, I joke.
And The Vampire by John William Polidori were probably written because of the volcano. Frankenstein needs no explanation, but The Vampire was the first modern vampire story and what sparked the vampire genre. The group of writers on vacation in Switzerland were forced inside by bad weather, and so Lord Byron held a contest to see who could write the scariest story. The volcano even changed the population distribution of the United States. Temperatures became intolerable for many New Englanders, so they migrated to the Northwest Territory, which resulted in Indiana becoming a state in 1816 and Illinois just 2 years later. Thousands migrated to western New York as well. It's been suggested that these migrants, coming from anti-slavery states, helped push the state of New York to ban slavery in 1827, the last northern state to do so. One of these migrants, coming from Vermont to New York, was 11-year-old Joseph Smith. The story goes that in 1817, Smith walked to Palmyra, New York, through 40 miles of snow a day for 3 to 4 weeks, after being forced from his wagon to make room for others. I should note that this was in the summer. The region he moved to became known as the Burned Over District because of its fast-moving wave of Christian revivalism during the Second Great Awakening that moved like a forest fire sweeping through. Immersed in the religious excitement, Joseph Smith's experiences led to his founding of Mormonism. After Smith died, the religion's new leader, Brigham Young, settled in the area that is now the state of Utah. Today, just over half of Utah's population of 3.3 million is Mormon, and the total membership of the Mormon Church tops 17 million. Before I share the next examples of how Indonesia has shaped human history, I want to thank today's sponsor. They are who make these videos possible, so thank you BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. I could probably use therapy right now. Between making YouTube videos full-time, a part-time job in the Army, a full load of graduate-level courses, and a newborn, for sponsoring this video.
I'm just fast-forwarding through the ad because, no offense, we don't need to listen to it.
I've been using the name Indonesia kind of loosely in this video, because everything I've talked about so far was before a modern state existed, or it was actually the Dutch East Indies, a colony of the Netherlands. Indonesia as a sovereign state exists because of this colonization. There are more than 700 languages spoken in Indonesia, and more than 1,300 ethnic groups spread out over 6,000 inhabited islands, as well as 3 religions with a majority population in sizable geographic areas. It's honestly quite impressive that this country is so united today. But anyway, the Netherlands colonized Indonesia initially for its spices, but it eventually evolved into other commodities like coffee and sugar. This was done through the first publicly traded company, the Dutch East India Company, also known as the VOC. The company, founded in 1602, made the Netherlands extremely rich. One estimate has the company worth the modern equivalent of $8 trillion. That's more than the value of Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon combined, though this number has been disputed. The Dutch have had a huge...
I have actually heard before the East India Trading Company was, in today's money, would have been worth more than those. I've never heard 8 trillion, but I have heard that they would be worth several of those companies all together. 8 trillion's a lot. You know, that's a shocking number, but it's not the first time I've ever heard that it was worth a lot.
Influence on the culture of the Western world. I've made an entire playlist on how Dutch culture had a larger impact on the US than is typically realized. This matters because a large reason the Netherlands became a global power and was so influential was because of the colonization of the East Indies. Now, this wasn't the Netherlands' only source of wealth. It wasn't even the largest. The country actually obtained more through the trade with Poland and the Baltic states, but it was extremely significant. It financed fleets that would rule the seas for decades and sparked the creation of the stock market. Many of Amsterdam's old canals and canal houses were financed by the trade in the East Indies. This colonization also resulted in a better understanding of the world's geography for Europeans. And I'm a small drop in the bucket, but a significant part of my income is covering maps that were funded by the VOC or created using VOC maps. Indonesians were relatively accepting of the Dutch at first. The Dutch were much more tolerant of the locals' religious beliefs compared to the Spanish and Portuguese. But Dutch liberalism often only applied when it was practical, especially when it was up to a company whose only goal was profit, and a government to keep it accountable was on the other side of the world. For example, take a look at Rune Island, the most western of the Banda Islands. The island had changed hands between the English and Dutch a few times in the first half of the 17th century, and so to prevent the English from setting up post again, the Dutch killed or enslaved all of the island's adult men, exiled the women and children, and chopped down every nutmeg tree on the island. The VOC only allowed cattle to roam free on Rune. This was to provide food for the rest of the Banda Islands, which were also massacred. It's unclear how many people were killed, but it's estimated that the Banda Islands population dropped from about 14,000 to 1,000 by the end of the Dutch conquest. But I bring Rune Island up for another historic bullet point. It was included in the trade for New York. It was given to England at the conclusion of the First Anglo-Dutch War, but the Dutch negotiated its return at the end of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. At the time, the Netherlands believed Rune Island and Suriname were of greater economic importance than New York. Now on to human history as a species. In 2003, the remains of what has been nicknamed the Hobbit after the Lord of the Rings race were discovered in a cave on the island of Flores. The Hobbit would have stood at 1.1 meters or 3 feet 7 inches. It's unclear exactly how old the Hobbit is. The layer of sediment the remains were found in was between 60,000 and 100,000 years old, but artifacts, likely from the same species, are believed to be between 50,000 and 190,000 years old. This is even more significant because it's unclear where it fits into the human evolutionary tree.
How long do bones last before they just break down? Because if that's between 60 and 100,000 years, skulls, like our bones and everything. Wow. I mean, to be honest, I've always thought a couple thousand years, which is stupid when you think about it, because I shouldn't say that. It's possible that they may last that long. I guess it would depend. I almost said how it was stored. I guess, depending on the climate and stuff like that. But still, never would have thought 60,000. Never would have thought 60,000 years. Wow.
Another notable piece of human history, in 2017, an Indonesian man died at what he and the Indonesian government claimed to be 146 years old, making him the oldest recorded person by 24 years. However, no independent sources have verified the claim. Today, 78 years after Indonesia declared its independence, it's the fourth most populated country in the world, and its population is still rising. Indonesia's economy is quickly growing, and it looks like in just a couple of years it will pass Russia for the sixth highest GDP. Its visibility on the world stage is long overdue, but it's finally claiming its place. It has disputes in the South China Sea, a region that is ranked amongst the most likely places to spark the next major conflict. China and Indonesia have tense encounters, but in general, Indonesia appears to downplay disputes with China, at least for now. This is likely because of strong economic ties with China. Earlier this year, Indonesia signed an agreement with Vietnam over maritime boundaries, a step in strengthening the region's maritime norms outlined in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which could lead to lasting peace. I expect Indonesia will continue to play a large role in our history, not because of its colonizers, and hopefully not because of volcanoes, but because it's a thriving sovereign nation asserting its position on the global stage. And that's all for this video.
That last shot, that's beautiful. And I love how big the roundabout is. We're starting to get some roundabouts, like in Peoria, my city. There are, well, I don't know exactly how many there are, but there are three or three, I don't know, however you want to throw up fingers, roundabouts, and it's completely not that big at all. But they're I always thought it was weird. American, you'd see European movies and they're in a roundabout, and I would think, what? Because there's multiple lane roundabouts, and if you're in the middle, it seems like you're stuck in the middle. But this is just a one lane roundabout. But I've always thought it was weird, and then we got one, and I was like, all right. And I remember I drove around in circles in that circle for like 2 minutes, and I was just like, this is awesome. Just, stupid. This is a really interesting video. This is really interesting. Wow. I would have never thought it was the fourth largest country, country. Never would have thought. Because, as they say, it's what, 17,000 islands? You can fit a lot of people in there. And obviously, after I found out that Java had that many people on there, that just blew my mind. But never would have thought that. And then getting in them, they're going to be the sixth largest economy. Like, that's awesome. Good job for them. It seems like they're on the rise. They're on the come up. Or not come up, but they're trending in the right direction. Instead of, it's famine and disease and people are cannibalizing one another while they're still alive. You don't want to hear that, but you see the city and then you hear like, they're moving up. That's great. Especially after, considering that the country seems to really have hated the world and tried to kill a lot of people. Your volcanoes, they still terrify me. I did not, the volcano, that just got me. I'm a stuttering fool apparently. They just got me. And that didn't help with the 2 volcano eruptions in the beginning. Well, the Krakatoa. I forgot the other one now. The World Ender. Almost World Ender. That's what I'm going to call it. All right. That was good. That was really good. Indonesia's butterfly effect to try to kill human history is what it should have been. All right. There is I almost said there's a subscribe button that you can donate. That's not what I mean. There's a thanks button you can donate. You can request things if you donate, and they will move to the top of the list. You don't have to. There's a subscribe button, and there's a thumbs up. Oh, and there's a bell. I'm sorry. You got to hit the bell. The warrior gets very angry if people don't hit the bell. I don't know how he knows, but I'll say this. He's going to hurt me if you don't. Oh, and then the thumbs down button is for people who, are just stupid. And you don't want to be stupid. You're not stupid. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night. And stop with the volcanoes. All right, stuff them full of marshmallows or whatever it is you have to do. But enough with the volcanoes. We're done. All right, we have enough land. No, we don't. Do we? Population's growing. Look, okay. Time out on the volcanoes for right now. And then probably after the eventual World War III, because it's coming, then we can shut them down definitely for good, because it's going to have wiped out a few 100 million people. And then if we ever get over, me telling you not to do that, that would hurt your economy, wouldn't it? All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the top of volcanoes, right? We're going to tell the volcano, no, and then we'll get out what we need, with our ash scoops. They make those, right? And then we dump them all around, and there you go. Look at that. Solving problems. Can we fill them full of concrete? Would that work? I have no idea. So now I'm going to end the video because I'm just rambling. Have a good day. Have a good night.